Hi, I'm Ashanti. Today we are going to talk about how to use Apache Avro with Amazon Kinesis data streams. So before the beginning of this tutorial, we assume that you have a basic understanding about the Amazon Kinesis data streams as well as the data serialization. So this video will be done in as two parts. But in the first part, we will show you how to produce data with the Avro data serialization, and in the next part we will show you how to consume data from the Amazon Kinesis data streams by using Apache Avro. So the next part will be done by SSE. So first we will walk through the first part of the video. When it comes to the Amazon Kinesis streams, when the payload size is large, the cost you have to pay for the Kinesis data streams will be high. When there are more consumers for single streams, the cost will be high again. If you are capable to reduce the size of the payload without losing any data that you are going to send through a single put record instance, then you are good to go with that. For this purpose, you can use data serialization as well as data compression. In this tutorial, we are going to use the Apache Avro data serialization mechanism to achieve this use case. So Apache Avro is a data serialization framework which is platform independent and as well as language independent. And it uses a schema to do the data serialization as well as the deserialization part. Moreover, Avro uses JSON to define the data structure, and it has the capability of schema compatibility, which is more powerful and effective. So in order to put your data into the Kinesis stream, first you need to do the serialization. For the serialization, you need to have the schema created. For this purpose, we will use a tool called Apache Nifi, where you can give your payload and convert the payload into an Apache Avro schema and use it with the Kinesis. So first we will go to the Apache Nifi site and download the Apache Nifi from there. So here I will download the Nifi binary. Since it is 1.2 GB, I have already downloaded it here. So then extract the downloaded Nifi from here and go to the Nifi bin folder path and open a terminal there. Then run the command sh nifi.sh start the Nifi server. To check whether this server gets started correctly, you can type the command status and check the status of that. Here it is running now. So go to localhost port and colon 8080/Nifi and load the Nifi server from there. Okay, it's getting loaded. In here, first you need to add the processor. You can add it by drag and drop to read the input file, where you are going to save your payload into a file and input into the Apache Nifi to create the schema. So you need to get the get file type processor here. So add it from here. Then you need to specify from where your file will be read by this processor. So to add it here, I have created a folder called Nifi resources. Here inside that folder, I have created two folders as input and output. So I will give the path of the input folder to the get file method. So I have given the input folder path. Then I'll save it and apply it here. Then you need to again drag and drop a processor from the Apache Nifi and type infer schema, where from this you will generate the schema by using the given input file. In here you have to do some configurations. Go to the properties tab and change the input content type to JSON, since you are going to use a JSON file as the input file. and you have to give a record name, Avro record name. If not, it won't work. I'll give it a test and apply here. Then you can connect the get file processor and the info Avro schema processor by dragging the cursor icon in the get file to the info Avro schema. So for a success scenario, once the file is read, it will be input into the info Avro schema. Then after you generated the schema, you have to save it into a file. For that, you can again drag and drop this processor and use the put file type to write it to a file. So I will select the put file and add it here. In here also you have to set the directory where you need to output this file. So I'll output it to the output folder. I'll copy the working directory path and give it here. Okay. And apply there. Then from info Avro schema, you have to create the relationship to the put files processor. So here you have to specify once a success, put the file to this particular folder. Since it shows some warning icons in the put file, you have to configure this automatically terminate relationship, where you are not going to do any relationships add any relationships after put file. So you have to tick failure and the success checkboxes here to terminate the relationship from here. For the info Avro schema also, since you have add the relationship for the success scenario only, you have to configure the automatic termination for the failure, original and the unsupported content also. Once it is done, all the processes are in the stop state, then you have to copy the input file into the input folder that I mentioned earlier. So it doesn't contain any files now. So I'll give the payload that I'm going to use for this test application to that input folder. So I'll copy it from here and paste it there. Okay, I have given it. Then you have to start the get file processor to start to read the input file and do the processing. First I started the get file. Now it's going to read. Then I'll start the info Avro schema and the put file method. Okay. Now it has been. If you go to the input folder now, you can see the file you have copied here has been missing. But if you go to the output folder, it is there with the postfix Avro. So this file contains the schema for your payload. So this is how the schema will represent. It will define the every field that you are going to use with the data type. So with that we have created the schema. So let's see how to do the serialization before putting data into the Amazon Kinesis data stream. We have created a sample application by using the Amazon Kinesis producer library, and we have added the dependencies for the Apache Avro serialization and the deserialization. So in basic, in order to produce data to the Amazon Kinesis data streams, you need to create a Kinesis producer object. So this Kinesis producer object needs a Kinesis producer configuration object to initiate this object. So first we will create the Kinesis producer configuration object at first. We are going to create it by this producer configs class, where I'm going to read the properties and create a Kinesis producer configuration. The properties that we are going to inject here are access key. I'll show you the properties file. Access key and secret key, which has the capability to read from put data to the Amazon Kinesis stream. The stream name that we are going to push data to then the AWS region which resides this stream. So once you have configured these properties here, I will read it from the as properties file and then pass it to the producer configuration object and create the Kinesis producer config object. Once I created it, I will pass it to the Kinesis producer object to create the Kinesis producer. Then what you have to do is to submit the event to the Kinesis stream. So you can just call the producer.addUser record and pass the stream name and the partition key as well as the payload that you are going to send. Here the payload means the data that you are going to send. Since you need to get the status whether it was a success or failure, I am using futures here. That's why I am accepting by payload as well as the future to submit in the submit event method. Then I have implemented the shutdown method where I will stop the publisher application once I am done with the data publishing. So I will go through the sample application that I have created. As I mentioned earlier, at first I will read the properties from the properties file and create the create a data publisher object where it will create the Kinesis producer object. Then if you are going to send the binary data, you don't need to worry about this part. The part belongs to serialization. You just can wrap the data into a byte buffer and put it into the Kinesis stream by calling the submit event method of the data publisher. But if you need to publish serialized data, first you need to do the serialization part. There you need to first load the schema object by passing the schema file that you have already generated through the Apache NIFI. So I have saved it in the resources folder and I will read it from here and then create the schema object. Then I will read my input file from here, the payload that I am going to send into the Kinesis stream, and convert into a JSON object array and do the serialization from here. So from the Avro serializer class, I will do the serialization. In the serialize method, I will accept the payload as a string and I will accept the schema that's going to be used for the serialization purpose. So from here I will do the serialization and return the data as a byte array. Then the return data will be converted to a byte buffer and will put into the submit event method with the future callback that I am going to use to get the status of the publishing data. Once it is done, you can publish the data to the Kinesis stream. So to do the serialization, this small part has to be added to the sample, a normal Kinesis producer application. Then I will run this application to show you how it has been done. So I am generating the serialized data and then putting the data to the stream. So you can see that the log message says the data has been sent to the stream. So once it is done, I am terminating the Kinesis producer client. So this is the way how to do Avro data serialization with the Amazon Kinesis data stream. So I will hand it over to the Yasasi to do the consumer part. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Yasasi. Kinesis Stream Consumer, which is also known as Kinesis Data Stream Application, is an application that we build to read and process data from a Kinesis stream. Here we are going to talk about how to consume serialized data from a Kinesis stream using Apache Avro data deserialization. We use Kinesis Client Library or KCL to create a consumer application that will process data from a Kinesis stream. Here we are going to use KCL version 1.x when creating the consumer application, and we have added it as a dependency. Also, we will be using Apache Avro for the data deserialization. Therefore, we have added the Avro dependencies here as well. Here we assume that you are familiar with the KCL as well as consumer applications. But let me briefly walk you through some key components of a consumer application in order to get an idea how to use data deserialization in a Kinesis Kinesis consumer application. First, we need to implement iRecord process methods inside the iRecord process interface. So this is the class that we have created to implement the iRecord process interface. There are three methods that we need to implement. First one is the initialize method. KCL calls this method when a record processor is initiated. It will initialize a record processor for a specific shard given the shard ID. And the next method and the second method that we are going to implement is the process records method. KCL invokes this method passing list of data records, and for the shards that from the shards that we have initialized using the initialize shard ID method. This record processor will process the records according to the logic that we have defined inside this process records method. We will be talking more about this process records method later. And the third method and the final method that we are going to implement is the shutdown method. KCL will call this shutdown method whenever the processing ends and the worker is no longer responding. Coming back to the process records method, so as I mentioned, the record processor will process the records according to the logic that we have implemented inside this method. So here we have a method called process records with retries. When we look into this method, here we will process all the records comes into this method, and it will handle all the exceptions. So it will take all the records and it will take one by one each record and call this process single record method. And inside that we have a retry mechanism. Whenever an exception or error occurred, it will handle the retries. When we go into this process single records, this will process a single record. Each record comes into this method. So this is the method that we are going to apply the data deserialization. We will inject a data record into this method. First thing, that is what we are going to do. The second one thing, we have a schema. We get this schema from the consumer configuration. How this schema is configuring, we will talk about this later on this video. And we have this data records. We take this data in bytes format. Then we pass this serialized data as in bytes format along with the schema into the deserialize method inside the Avro deserializer class. So this deserialize method, we take the serialized data as bytes format and we take the schema and we perform the deserialization within this method, and we return this deserialized data back to the single records method. So this is how we are going to apply data deserialization. As we got an idea how to apply the data serialization, how to modify a sample consumer application with data deserialization when processing the records, let's look at a sample consumer application with Apache Avro data deserialization. So this is our sample application. We have, as I talked about before, we have implemented all the iRecord process methods. And here, start from this main, we have the consumer configuration properties. So this is the consumer configuration properties that we are going to have. We have application name. This application must be unique across all the applications and the DynamoDB tables that we have in the same region. The second thing is the stream name. This is the name of this Kinesis stream that we are going to read the data from, and we have access key and a secret key to access the stream name that we have specified. Also, importantly, we need to specify the initial stream position. This is indicate from where we are going to read the start the reading data from. So coming back to the consumer application, we read all the consumer configuration properties and we'll load that properties into a properties object, and then we will create an object in sample consumer passing these properties. So this is our constructor. First we create a consumer configuration object by passing these properties. Inside this class, consumer configuration class, we do the usual configuration that we do when we are creating consumer application, configuring stream name, access key, secret key, application name, etc. What we have done differently and what is important here is the configuring this schema. So when we are setting the schema, we are getting a schema, we are reading the schema from this payload.json.avro.file. So this is the file that we have created in the beginning of the video using the Nifi tool, and Ashanti used this same file, this same schema to produce the data into the Kinesis stream. So we use the same schema and we read it and we take it from to the input stream input stream, and then we will convert that into a schema object. So this is how we are going to configure the schema, and we have used this schema when processing the data in the iRecord process implementation, and that is what I have used when deserializing the data, serialized data from when processing the data. So again, coming back to the sample consumer class. So here we have the consumer configurations, and then this consumer configuration will be passed to Kinesis event consumer. We will create a Kinesis event consumer object with that. So again, back to here, and from this we will use this sample consumer configuration and we will call this consume data. So with this method, inside this method, we have this consumer object, which is the Kinesis event consumer object, and we call this process events inside that, it will start consume the data. So if you run this application, what it does is, basically it configure the Kinesis streams, and it will configure a consumer application, create a consumer application, and it will start reading from data from the Kinesis stream using this process events method. So I have created run this application, it will getting configured and it will getting started, and after that, so as you can see here, this is the data, serialized data that Ashanti has put when producing the data into Kinesis stream. This application, consumer application, reads the data from the Kinesis stream and deserialize that serialized data from that, and it will log the data here. Based on your use case, you can do any processing as you wish, but the important thing that you have to do before processing the data, you need to apply the data deserialization with Avro deserializer to use this serialized data from the Kinesis streams. So we have looked into how we can consume the serialized data from a Kinesis stream using Apache Avro data deserialization, and we have attached the link to these sample codes that we have used to produce and consume data from the Kinesis streams. We hope that you got an understanding how to use Apache Avro serialization with Amazon Kinesis data streams. Thank you.